little bit, maybe 5 or 6 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Kwang, how's it going?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Hello, teacher.
Hi, how's it going? I think it's your first time in my class, Kwang.
It's correct.
That's awesome. My name is Farhan, and I live in the U.S. What about you, Kwang? Where are you from?
I'm from Vietnam, teacher.
Vietnam. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What city?
I'm South Vietnam, Sóc Trăng City.
South Vietnam. Wow, that's great. That's awesome. I think you're my first student from Vietnam, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, Laura, how's it going? Laura, can you hear me? I think, let me write a quick message to Laura. Okay, I think she, unfortunately, we have seen Laura's connection has been really weak sometimes, and it's difficult for her to join classes, but it's okay, I guess. This lesson is very long, 7 different parts of the Future Perfect. Hopefully we can finish it and still have time for a conversation. Um, Before we get started, guys, so I wanted to ask you guys a question. It's actually nice that both of you guys are in Asia, where the time is now early morning. Um, so Kwang and Heidi, are you going to have prepared a meal by later tonight? Are you going to have prepared a meal by later tonight? Maybe lunch, maybe dinner, maybe a snack. Heidi?
Well, I can't cook because of my injury.
Oh, yes, that's right. So how are you going to eat? What are you going to eat?
I I can prepare hot pot, nabe, only cutting vegetables. And the middle of us, there's a pan, and on the stove, there's hot water. We put the ingredient inside and dip in the sauce and eat it. So very easy,
Uh-huh.
only cutting vegetables.
Nice. And will you be able to cut vegetables even though your arm is
Yes,
broken?
I can use right hand.
Great, great, fantastic. So you are going to have prepared a meal by later tonight.
Yes, yes.
Fantastic.
Only nabe, I mean, mentioned.
Yeah. Kwang, what about you? Are you going to have prepared a meal by later tonight?
My mother is going to prepare lunch
Your
because
mo-
it's going to lunch.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does she usually prepare? Does she prepare a lot of food for lunch or?
No, every day we do not prepare for the week. We prepare for a particular meal.
Wow,
No.
that's awesome.
Yes, yes, yes.
So it's always
We go.
fresh.
Yeah, correct. It's fresh meat, fresh food. We go to the market every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Dinner we have to go to the market earlier, about 4 p.m. We go to the market to prepare for dinner. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But lunch is now the time for prepare lunch.
That's awesome. So you guys are really fresh ingredients and visiting the market every day. It's very healthy, it seems like to me, which is very good. In the U.S., a different situation. People don't always eat healthy, and we talk about that a lot in some of the other classes. But because we have a longer lesson today, guys, let's actually get started. And so today we are going to be discussing the future perfect tense, right? So the future perfect is similar to when we use the present perfect and the past perfect, right? But the future perfect is a tense that we use to describe something that will occur before another action
Mm-hmm.
in the future, or something that will happen by a particular time in the future. Okay? So it has two different things. So when I asked you guys, will you have prepared a meal? Are you going to have prepared a meal by later tonight? Are you going to have prepared a meal by later tonight? So our example of that future time period is a later tonight, and the future perfect tense is formed by going to have prepared, right? And it is an interesting tense. It is something that I swear to God we don't use a lot in English. Okay, even as a native speaker, I find it difficult to think of a natural scenario in which we use the future perfect tense. Um, it's interesting for me as we go through this lesson. I think we will find some times that we can use the future perfect,
Is
but
it okay if I use will? I will have prepared.
I will have prepared. So you can use the will as well. Yup, you can use the will as well. There are two ways actually. You can use going to or you can use will.
Mm-hmm.
So both of them work in the future perfect tense. But it is something that is rare. I personally find it to be rare in terms of when it's used. But before I get started with that, Murad, how's it going?
Hello, Farhan. How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Awesome.
Glad to hear
So,
you.
fantastic. Yeah, we are going to be learning about the future perfect tense today, Murad. So, just to get started, to give you guys an idea of what the future perfect tense looks like, there are two ways we can construct the future perfect tense. The first way that we'll be looking at is the will construction, right? So this is what Heidi was mentioning when we use the word will, right? So will or will not plus have plus the past participle, right? Will you have prepared a meal by 7 p.m. tonight? Murad, can you answer that for me? Will you have prepared a meal by 7 p.m. tonight?
Yes,
What's the
I
full
will
sentence?
have I
Yeah.
will have prepared a meal by the end of 7 p.m.
Fantastic. I will have prepared a meal by the end of, or by 7 p.m. or by the end of the night, whatever, right? So this is how we use it. Heidi,
Yeah.
will you have finished a Colingo class by 3 p.m. today?
Yeah.
What's the full sentence? Let's try to use the words.
I will have finished every coding lesson by 3 p.m.
Fantastic, right? Kwang, will you have helped your mother with lunch by the time you start preparing for dinner?
No, no, I will not. No, I will not.
How come? What's the reason?
Yeah, because mm, I don't like cooking.
You don't like cooking, so
Yeah,
you're going to wait for your mother to do all the cooking.
yeah, yeah, correct.
You're not going to help her at all.
Yes.
I,
It's for yeah, it's for women, not for men.
oh man, you
The
gotta.
country, yeah, yeah.
You're still living in another world, man.
But yeah.
I have to cook myself all the time. I live alone, so I guess men and women both have to learn, right? But no, that's for another day. Okay, fantastic. So you guys are understanding, I think, the construction of the will form of the future perfect. But mainly that was because I was asking the questions. Let's see if you guys can give me some questions. So let's have a conversation, actually. I think it's easier to have a conversation. Heidi, please ask a question to Kwang using the will construction. Anything you want, using this formula.
Okay. What will have done before going to bed?
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, I will have done exercise before I go to bed. Handy. Thank you. Yeah.
Nice. I will have done exercise by the time I go to bed, right? Fantastic. Heidi, is that a good sentence? Is that a good answer?
Yeah, I think so.
It is, right? Fantastic. Kwang, can you ask a question using the will construction to our friend Murad?
Okay, teacher.
Sure.
Yeah. Um, I would like to ask Murad. Murad, what will
Yeah.
what will you have done before 7 p.m. Tonight?
I will have finished eating.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, right? So Kwang said, what will you have done by 7 p.m. tonight? I will have finished eating, right? Fantastic. So you guys are really getting the point here. And let's not forget, though, guys, that when we use this construction, we can also say will not, and we can also change the subject to whatever we want, right? Will my mother have finished cooking by 7 p.m.? Right? Maybe not, right? Maybe if she doesn't have any help, like Kwang's mother, she might not finish, right? I'm just joking. I think your mother will actually be able to finish on time. But we have every possible example, right? Will have, will not have, right? As well as any subject, right? Any subject can be used in this. And for the past participle, you guys have used done, but you guys have also said, for example, will you have eaten? Will you have, other examples of the past participle? So that's the first way we can make the future perfect tense. Another way to make the future perfect tense is if we use the going to instead of will, right? So this is what I was asking you guys. I said, are you going to have prepared dinner, right? And the construction of this is a slightly different construction. It starts with the to be verb, I am, you are, he is, she is, we are, they are, that verb, and we can say not going to have or going to have, and then the past participle after that. So, Murad, can you give me an example? Why don't you ask me a question this time?
Are you going to have played tennis by the end of 8 p.m.?
Yeah. Are you going to have played tennis? So when we say by the end of 8 p.m., Murad, it's actually better to say by 8 p.m., right? Because if we use by the end of 8 p.m., 8 p.m. is technically just a time, right? It's an exact time. So it really doesn't have a by the end or by the beginning. We can, if we use a specific time, we can say by 8 p.m., by noon, by midnight, by 7 p.m. If we
Maybe I
want,
can change this to
yeah,
by the end of July, for example, instead of yes.
fantastic. By the end of July, by the end of the night, by the end of the day, right? These are better examples when we want to use by the end of something, right? Fantastic. So are you going to have played tennis by the end of July? So July is still how many months? Like 10 months away? Um, I think I will have played tennis by the end of July. I think maybe at least once in the next 10 months, uh, I will play tennis, right? So, yes, fantastic job with that. Kwang, can you give me an example of a construction using going to, and let's ask that question to Heidi this time.
Yeah. Heidi, are you going to have finished your class for 2 hours?
Pardon?
Heidi, are you going to have finished your class for
Finish
2 hours?
plus?
I think for tomorrow, right, Kwang?
Maybe for 2 hours or
Oh, for 2 hours. Okay.
yeah, 2 hours.
Uh-huh. Heidi, can you help Kwang with that sentence, and then you can answer it.
I can't catch.
So,
Yeah.
go ahead, Kwang.
Heidi, are you going to have finished your
Have
class, your
finished.
Japanese class?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Finish.
For 2 hours?
Finish the next word. I
You're
couldn't.
finished your class.
A class.
Uh-huh.
Class by.
By for the end of 2 hours. Is that what you said, Kwang?
Yeah, for 2 hours.
For 2 hours. Uh-huh. For 2 hours.
No. I wouldn't. I wouldn't have finished my study by the 2 hour. By 2 hours later.
Uh-huh. So, Kwang, when you asked the question, you did a great job using the beginning, using the going to construction, right? Heidi, are you going to have finished or are you going to have studied, right, your class? But at the end, you said for 2 hours, right? So this part was a little bit incorrect, Kwang, because you would, if you want to say 2 hours in the future, you can say, for example, Heidi, are you going to have finished, or are you going to have studied for your class in the next 2 hours, right? In the next 2 hours.
In the
Yeah.
next 2 hours.
Yeah, in the next 2 hours, right? Or you can say, for example, by 2 hours from now, right? By 2 hours from now. Just looking at it, if it's 2 p.m. and you're talking about 4 p.m., right? Heidi, are you going to have finished, are you going to have studied your lessons by 2 hours from now? Or in the next 2 hours, right? So that allows the speaker to understand, oh, okay, just the next 2 hours. Kwang only wants to know about the next 2 hours, not by tomorrow night, by July, right? Just in the next 2 hours, or by the next, or by 2 hours from now, right? Great job,
Thank
though.
you.
Absolutely, Kwang. Great job. We have these things are really based on practice, and we noticed that, especially with the future perfect, like I said before, native speakers rarely use this. I'm actually very surprised that we are introducing it as a topic. But so when we are talking about this, right? We looked at the difference between by and in, right? So in a few hours versus by next July, by next Friday. When we use by, we are saying not later than a particular time, right? Will you have finished this lesson by next Friday, right? By next Friday, meaning you cannot wait beyond Friday. It can't. If you finish it on Saturday, then you have to say no. I will not have finished it by next Friday. If you can finish it by Thursday, then yes, I will have finished it by next Friday. So by sets a time limit, right? By a particular time in the future. But in, for example, in a few hours, that we use to say within a certain amount of time. So Kwang, your example was great because it was right on time. In the next 2 hours, right? Will you have finished studying? Will you have finished studying in the next 2 hours, right? We're just talking about a particular range of time now, within the next 2 hours. And by includes every minute until that time limit in the future, right? So that's the difference between by and in, and we use these a lot more, right? We use these a lot more in normal conversation. For example, are you going to be done in 2 hours, right? That's not future perfect. That's just future continuous almost, right? Are you going to be done? Yeah, I think that's future perfect. I'm not, or future continuous. I'm not sure. But are you going to be done in 2 hours? Are you going to be done with the project by Friday, right? This is what we use a lot more. So by versus in, and then the next thing I wanted to briefly mention, so far though, guys, do we have any questions with the will construction, the going to construction, by and in? Do we have any questions on these?
For example, if I ask some time, for example, by what time are you gonna have finished teaching? Is it okay?
Yes, that is perfect. By what time are you going to have finished taking this lesson or teaching, whatever verb you want to say, right? Because you are using the perfect formula. You're saying, by what time, okay, whatever, are you going to have finished, right? So the are you going to have finished or are you gonna have finished is that second construction, that going to construction.
Yeah.
Right, so that works perfectly. No, absolutely. Any other questions, guys? Huang, did you have a question?
You mentioned that the native speaker rarely use future perfect. Is it correct?
Yeah, you know,
Very.
we don't use it.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
It's something we use mainly. We say like, are you going to be done? Are you going to finish? What will you do? Will you be finished? Right? We don't use the have. Are you going to have done? It's a little bit more of a serious, maybe a professional way of speaking. I don't know, honestly. It's a different tense. So when we look at these examples, one of the things that we want to be able to use as well is when we are talking about time expressions. So time expressions become important in this conversation. For example, we use by and in as two examples of time expressions. When we are talking about things that we do in the future, if you are switching, if we have a word, for example, that is future tenses behave very interestingly, right? That's kind of where the situation starts. If we're using a time expression that begins with when, or begins with before, or after, or as soon as, or unless, right? These time expressions behave differently. So, for example, if you want to use as soon as, a lot of people use as soon as. We can use as soon as in many examples. As soon as I finish this course, I will have earned my bachelor's degree. That's one example. As soon as I finish this course, I will have earned my bachelor's degree. So this is a two-part sentence, right? Since we are using the time expression as soon as, we have to use the simple present in that part of the sentence. In that part of the sentence that begins with the time expression. So the time expression we are looking at is as soon as, right? And we cannot use the future perfect tense with these time expressions, like as soon as. You can't say as soon as I will have earned my bachelor's, or as soon as I will have finished this course. That doesn't work. You need to have it be the present tense in that time clause. So the time expression, as soon as, is the beginning of the time clause in the sentence. And because it's a special type of time expression, we have to use the future tense, not the future perfect. I'm sorry, we have to use the present tense and not the future perfect tense. So as soon as I finish my meal, I will have eaten 300 calories, right? As soon as I submit this application, I will have applied to 6 jobs, right? That it's a very subtle difference, a very small difference, but we should be aware of the importance that it has in English grammar, right? So time expressions, we need to use simple present for some of the examples. For other examples, we use the present perfect. So the time expression when, right? So we have some time expressions like as soon as, other time expressions like when, right? I'm going to watch TV when I have finished my work. I'm going to watch TV when you can say, you can also just say the present tense. When I finish my work. But you can also use the present perfect if you want. I'm going to watch TV when I have finished my homework. Or when I finish my homework. Right? So that it's a complicated example, but this is something that we should just know about in the back of our minds. With time expressions, using certain, when they are in certain sentences, the future tense behaves differently. We either use the simple present, or we use the present perfect, right?
We cannot do present continuous after when, teacher. Is it correct?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, Kwon.
For example, um, I broke my leg when I was playing soccer.
I broke my leg when I was playing soccer, huh?
Can I use when with the present continuous when I am playing soccer? Is it correct?
Well, if you want to say I broke my leg when I am playing soccer, that's a difference. That's there's a little bit of confusion in that sentence, right? Because broke is an action in the past, so you would have to use the past continuous to keep the.
When I was playing soccer. Is it correct?
Yes, that's perfectly fine. I broke my leg when I was playing soccer.
When a while, which one is correct? When a while.
When I was playing soccer.
When well, which one is better? When or well?
It's going to be when, right? Because you want to. The second one, are you saying is will?
Teacher. Well.
Uh-huh. Can you write it down, Kwang? Might be a little bit easier. Can you just type it? When or while? Uh-huh, okay. Very good question. While is it better in this example? Right? So, I broke my leg while I was playing soccer, when I was playing soccer. Both of them work. Both of them work, Kwang. But while is a little bit better, because it's describing a continuous, while we use to describe more than just one time in the past, or more than just one specific time. When we can use to describe one specific time. When I was there, I broke my leg. While I was playing soccer. It's a better example. It's a better way to say it. I think so.
Thank you, teacher.
No worries, Kwang. Sorry about the maybe it was the noise, or maybe my head is just not understanding right now. But great question. Yeah, Heidi, go ahead.
We are gonna have dinner when I have finished cooking.
We are going to have dinner when I have finished cooking.
When I have finished cooking, it's okay.
When I will have finished cooking. We're going to have dinner when I will have finished cooking. Yeah, I think that works. I think that works actually. To me, it doesn't sound incorrect at all. When I will have finished dinner, right? When I will have
dinner.
Well, you know, Heidi, I think that is actually incorrect. And this is why this tense is very difficult, because we don't use it in English, first of all, and it has a very weird rule, right? So instead of using when is a time expression, right? So we were saying before when, as soon as, while, these are all time expressions, right? If we use a time expression when, and we are also saying I'm going to do something, when something, we should use the present perfect instead of the will construction. So what would your sentence be?
Because after finishing my cooking, we can eat the dinner, right? So
that works.
We are going to have dinner when I'll have finished cooking.
When I have finished cooking. Just a present perfect, not a future perfect in this case.
Oh.
Yeah, so
we are going to have dinner in the future.
Yes.
So when I'll have finished cooking.
Yes, we are going to have dinner when I have finished cooking.
I have, not I will have.
I have, exactly, not I will have.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's why this is confusing. And you know, to the native speaker, it doesn't matter. Like really, like when the first thing you said, I thought it was right because it made sense. You know, that's why this is very specific and very specific grammar that native speakers don't even know. Like, but you know, the time expression aspect of this is very confusing because they have certain time expressions. They're saying when, while, before, after, as soon as. For these examples, we use the simple present in that part of the example, but we can also use the present perfect, right? So you can say, we are going to have dinner when I finish cooking. That's the present tense, right? Just a normal present. Or you can say the present perfect, when I have finished cooking. So that's the difference. That's where it gets a little bit more confusing, but it works, right? It works. It's a little bit confusing, but it works. So, Kwang, do we have any questions, by the way? I know it's a little bit confusing.
Yeah. Keep going, teacher.
Okay, fantastic. Great, Kwang. Okay, so let us go on to the next part then. So when we are talking about the future perfect, we also want to be very sure that we are using, if we are using the future perfect continuous. The future perfect continuous, right? This is even more complicated. So the future perfect continuous is there are two types of this as well. If we use the will construction, it's will plus have been plus a verb that ends in ing. I will have been working. I will have been studying, right? So that is an action that is continuing until a particular time in the future, right? I will have been studying for 6 hours by the time my mom comes to pick me up. My mom will have been cooking for 6 hours by the time the guests arrive to my house, right? And the second construction of this is if we use the going to construction. The going to construction using future perfect continuous, right? I am going to have been learning for at least 6 hours when my sister comes home from school. Very, very complicated English, okay? Not going to lie to you guys. This is stuff that really we don't use. I am actually going to make a note to mention this to some of the Colingo folks, that this lesson should really be 2 lessons. Because it's too much information, honestly, in one class. I mean, we've been doing this for 35 minutes now, and this class is way too long. We want to be able to have time for discussion as well. So I'm going to stop here, guys, with the grammar, and I think we should go on to our discussion. Future perfect continuous, as well as the future perfect tense, are both very detailed, and I guess the focus is really on the construction aspect of it. The focus is really on if you use the will you, or the will construction, or the going to construction, as well as keeping in mind the time expressions. When we use time expressions like when, while, as soon as, those kinds of time expressions, we should try our very best to think of that time expression, that time clause. So as soon as blah blah blah, when blah blah blah, that is the time clause. We should use the present perfect or just the present tense, right? Those are the important parts of this lesson. Do we have any questions so far, guys?
It's very difficult. I have been studying until end of this year. By the time I'll pass the exam, not good.
I will have been studying, until the end of this year. By the time I pass my exam. Hmm. I will have been studying. So that's the will construction. I will have been studying by the end of this year,
Mm.
or until the end of this year, I'm sorry,
Mm.
by the time I pass the exam. Yes, that works.
Mm.
That works. And that is an example of the future perfect continuous,
Mm.
right? I will have been studying until the end of this year by the time I pass the exam. Yep, yep, it works.
Oh, very difficult.
But it is difficult, absolutely. It's very difficult, and it's stuff that native speakers don't really say. Right. So we'll take a break, guys. We'll take a break from this grammar, and I will reach out to the Colingo colleagues of mine and tell them there are still 3 more grammar sections in this lesson.
Mm.
And it's a very long lesson. I think they should break it up. So we will work on that for you guys. In the meantime, so let's get started on our article today, guys. And our article is very interesting. I like the article because it talks about food, and it talks about something that I think really affects all of us, right? Maybe Kwang, not so much you because you don't cook, my friend, but this is something that folks who cook have to be very aware of, right? So this is an article in the USA Today, right? I'm going to also screen share so that you guys can see my screen, and we will jump in and talk about mold in food. Okay, so moldy food is never delicious. It's not an appetizing thing for us, but we can learn some special things about mold when it comes to food, right? So let's get started here, guys. I think you guys should be able to see my screen. Mold in food. Here is what you need to know. The mold in yogurt is not a serious health threat for most consumers. You may want to give some items in your fridge the cold shoulder. The recent recall of Chobani Greek yogurt brought new attention to the issue of mold that develops in food, when it's harmful, and what to do about it. On September 5, the company that makes Chobani yogurt voluntarily recalled containers with the code 16012 and best by dates of September 11 to October 7. The Food and Drug Administration received a total of 170 complaints associated with Chobani yogurt as of September 13. The various issues reported continue to be cramps, nausea, headache, and diarrhea. The complaints were submitted by individuals in Arizona, Delaware, New York, Maryland, Ohio, Pennsylvania, California, Indiana, and Florida, all over the country. Okay? These reports about a product only reflect information as reported and do not represent any conclusion by the FDA about whether the product actually caused the adverse events. You may be wondering what to do if you find mold or microscopic fungi lurking in foods in your refrigerator or pantry. Here are 10 questions about mold in foods. The answers are from food safety experts and a government website. So what is mold, guys? Mold is that bacteria, that fungi, actually it's not bacteria, I'm sorry, it's fungi that develops in your food, for example, in this case, yogurt. Some vegetables, if you keep the vegetables outside for a long time, then they will grow mold, right? They will grow this small layer of fungi that are that is maybe dangerous, and you shouldn't eat food that has mold on it, right?
But sometimes some food they made molds intentionally, like
Exactly.
cheese or something.
Exactly, right? So this is exactly what they say here. Are molds dangerous? Some foods have mold that is safe to eat and even delicious. For example, brie cheese has surface mold, right? So this is actually something that they want as a part of the cheese. So not necessarily something that is dangerous, right? What does mold in food look like? It could look like a fuzzy green or white spot in the food, right? And it can also be something that's invisible. Invisible bacteria can also grow with the mold, right? And then they're talking about this particular mold that's found in this type of yogurt. We don't really care about this, so let's skip number 3. What would happen if you accidentally ate mold in yogurt, for example? Most people will just excrete it. They won't notice anything, right? You might have nausea, or you might have diarrhea, but it would be transient. It would just pass through the body. Not something we should be very worried about, right? If you ate mold in yogurt, should you see a doctor? If it's just transient, temporary, maybe you have a little bit of an upset stomach, maybe you have diarrhea, then probably not. Okay? If you see mold in a spoonful of yogurt, for example, at the top of the yogurt, then you should discard the entire product immediately, right? That means that if you open up a container of yogurt and you see that the top has mold, then likely the entire thing has mold, and you shouldn't eat it, right? This one is still about yogurt. We don't really care. So if you see mold on a slice of bread, what should you do? The appearance of mold on bread usually means that the entire loaf is moldy. It is best to throw out the entire loaf as well as the bag containing the bread, right? So this is probably, if you notice if you're noticing mold on bread, then it's best to throw away the entire thing, right? And here we see an example of mold on bread. And it really is pretty nasty. I mean, look at this white, look at this green, right? Nobody wants to eat anything like this. Is it okay to sniff foods to find out whether they're moldy? Should you put your nose up to it? Should you smell it? No. Avoid it. Avoid sniffing foods because they can cause respiratory trouble. They can make your breathing more difficult, right? And how should you get rid of moldy food? Let's say you notice a bread like this. This is disgusting, right? How would you get rid of it? You can put it in a small paper bag or maybe wrap it in plastic and dispose it in a covered trash container, right? The trash container should be covered so that children or animals or whatever don't go near that food, right? And also clean the area where the food was stored. Maybe it was in your refrigerator. Clean your refrigerator a little bit, right? Check items that maybe the moldy food may have touched, right? So important. A lot of this stuff is kind of common sense, but we should be aware of the idea of the safety behind moldy food, right? Because if we store food, we should also be aware of how to take care of the food, right? So, any questions, guys, on the article so far?
Yes, it's okay, teacher. Yes, I can learn more about to keep the food clean, and you should clean up the refrigerator to do away mold, bacteria,
Absolutely.
yeah, harmful bacteria, yeah.
Absolutely. Harmful bacteria, harmful fungi, right? These are all things that we would not want on our food. So, Heidi, any questions from you?
No question. But
Okay.
not only food, and even the um, several machines, they can find the mold.
Really?
It's very bad for our body.
Yeah, right? It's something that we want to avoid. So, I have a question for you guys now. I mean, let's think about what we have in our homes, in our refrigerator, or other things like this, right? So, Heidi, what foods, okay, what do you think all the food in your refrigerator will stay fresh in a few months?
No, humans no. Huh? If you put it freezer, maybe to the
Hmm.
refrigerator, it can keep the food fresh for 3 or 4 days.
The refrigerator is 3 or 4 days, huh? Yeah.
Particularly,
Go ahead, Heidi. I'm sorry.
particularly vegetables, they are getting worse quickly.
So vegetables really they go bad pretty quickly. And what kinds of foods would go bad after 4 days? Just vegetables, or maybe something else also in the refrigerator?
Vegetables and other ingredients, ham and meat,
Uh-huh.
the fish. Fish we should eat it immediately.
Fish is something that we eat immediately. What about milk?
I keep milk for long, but
Really?
1 week.
1 week, Fantastic. Kwang, can you think of some other foods that maybe you keep in your refrigerator but you don't want to, but that will not stay fresh for more than a week?
Yeah, I think vegetable, and you keep it only for 4 hours or
Mm-hmm.
something. Fruit. When you cut it half, you do not allow to keep it more than 4 hours because
Exactly.
it's happened more than 4 hours. Many bacteria can invade in the food. Invade the food. It's caused a lot of it's born a lot of bacteria inside of fruit. Yeah, I
Absolutely
think
right.
food. Yeah.
Yeah, the fruit, the bacteria can invade, and you can get a lot more of the. I mean, fruit can go bad really quickly, right? Fruit and vegetables, absolutely. So those are the two big ones. And from Heidi, we heard meat as well, possibly fish. You want to really eat quickly. I actually took salmon for my lunch tomorrow. I'm making salmon, so I took my salmon from the freezer. I put it in the refrigerator just so that it thaws a little bit overnight, and then I'll be able to cook it tomorrow, right? So. Um, What kind, or actually, this is a different question now. We are going to try to use the future perfect in this one. So we're going to try to use the future perfect using the going to construction if possible. All right, guys? So this is the example that we saw at the beginning of the class when we use going to plus, or we use the verb for to be, I am, you are, he is, she is, going to have, and then the past participle. So, Heidi, are you going to have your chores completed by tomorrow?
Mature.
Chores, yeah, just work that you need to do around the house, maybe cooking, maybe you want to go outside, you have things you want to do outside. Are you going to have all of those chores done by tomorrow?
Yeah, I would. I will have finished every chores by tomorrow.
Fantastic. And what chores do you have, Heidi, if you don't mind sharing?
So cleaning and cooking
Uh-huh.
and washing dish, everything.
Uh-huh.
By the time I'm going to the bed.
Uh-huh. By the time you go to bed, right? So not even tomorrow, you'll have it done today.
Today, yes.
Yeah. And I mean, Kwang, what about you? What are your goals for today? And are you going to have all of those goals accomplished, finished by the end of the day?
Coal. What do coal mean? Coal. What does coal mean, teacher?
Oh,
Coal.
I'm sorry, goals. Uh-huh. Uh, are you going to have your goals?
Yeah. Goals. Yeah, I see.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
My aim. Yeah.
your aims exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to have finish the voltage machine. The voltage machine because it's broken down. I'm repairman. I'm mechanic. I'm going to repair this one. I want this machine. I don't know how to call it. Want this machine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
So you're
going
gonna
to finish
you're,
it.
you're gonna have it finished by the end of the day, huh?
Yeah, the basic.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
okay.
That's really good. What about, so if we are trying to ask in something about, so actually before I ask about that, I mean, why is it important, do you guys think? Why is it important to anticipate, to think about food when we are buying food? Is it important to think about food when we are buying food? Thinking about when will this food expire? When will we have to throw it out? I mean, are these important considerations? Heidi, when you go shopping, do you think about the kind of food you're buying and how long they will last?
It's very important, but recently I read the article. People tend to buy the milk the further from us, the depth of the shelf, because the staff of the supermarket put the milk, fresh milk, the depth of the shelf, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
close to our place, a little closer than expired. Then people buy the different. So the close to the expired milk is remaining. So it maybe later supermarket owner need to throw away the milk. So we should buy the close of the shelf.
And not the ones that are in the back of the shelf, right?
Yeah, to avoid the waste of food.
Uh-huh. And I mean, just in general, for example, if when you go shopping for chicken or, meat, do you consider the date of expiration?
Maybe I'll cook the later, so I don't think about that the expired date.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you can just put stuff in the freezer. In the freezer, they'll last for months, maybe.
But toast bread for toast, I put all toast bread in the freezer. Then when I toast the bread, the outside is like color is like fox. We call it fox color, but center is very soft. So freezing bread is very good idea.
Yeah, I actually freeze bread myself because when I go to a specific baker. I go to a kind of a special baker, and his bread is very good and it's very delicious. And I buy maybe 3 or 4 loaves at one time, and it's far away, so I go once a month and I buy the food, and the bread that I don't open, I just keep in the freezer, right? So this is an important consideration, especially. Kwang, when you shop, do you consider the dates of the food, or it seems like in your society people shop every day.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. To be honest, I think it's very important. When I go to the market, there are a lot of food they divide in many categories, and
Mm-hmm.
I have to choose. I want to buy vegetable, I look at it carefully. Some leaves is broken. Some leaves is broken. I see it. It is the old type. I don't want to buy this vegetable. When it change the color, I, I do not need it. I
Mm-hmm.
would like to look at it new. It it's new color.
Mm-hmm. The
Yeah,
fresh color, right? The fresh color.
yeah, the breast color. And the other thing in my country, people sell meat. They usually put on blood. They put on blood on meat. It make it new. For example, pork. They they
Uh-huh.
they they, 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 they put on blood on the meat, make it new. You see it just new, but it's the old meat. You should look at it carefully.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I look at carefully.
Absolutely.
Breast meat is very important to me, and breast vegetable. Think,
Fresh.
look at it carefully.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Kwang, what's the most difficult vegetable or fruit to understand? Because, for example, when I go shopping, I'm a very bad shopper, right? So if my mom tells me, get some watermelon, get a watermelon for the family or something, then I check. Sometimes I hit the watermelon. Sometimes I listen to it. There are many ways to understand if a vegetable or if a fruit is fresh. What's the most difficult fruit or vegetable for you uh, when it comes to knowing if it's fresh or not?
Yeah. Teacher, I usually take it. The heavy watermelon is very good. You do
Heavy
not need,
watermelon.
yeah, heavy, but
Uh-huh.
you have to choose heavy watermelon, and the color should be green, should be green. Okay,
So not yellow,
yeah,
but green.
yeah. So depend on the kind of watermelon. Sometimes
Uh,
they match from the other fruits. But in my country, I bring it up. It's heavy, it's good. And
mhm.
then I ask the street vendor to cut a little bit on the top of the watermelon. But I think when you go to the supermarket, you cannot do that. But in my country, many street vendor, they allow to cut a little bit on the top, but I see it's red color. Oh wow,
Mm-hmm.
it's very good. But
Yeah,
be careful, heavy watermelon is very good.
heavy watermelon's very good.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
What about something like for example, I
How
don't
about
know.
avocado? Avocado. Avocado is very difficult to choose.
Yeah, avocado, right? I actually had two avocados in my fridge that today I
Mm.
threw out because I had no idea if they were good or not. They were in my fridge for maybe 2 weeks, and I didn't eat them. I didn't use them, unfortunately, so I just threw them out, right? I mean, I think avocado is good. What are some other vegetables that you use, Kwang? Like maybe tomatoes, eggplant. Um, how do you know if they're fresh?
Heidi, go ahead.
For example,
Is it
if a
how
Color and shining.
if the color is shiny, so for a tomato, if it's nice, a
Color.
red
Tomato
shiny
color.
tomato.
Mm.
So color is important. Chilies, I know you guys eat a lot of chilies, right? Chili, peppers, things like that. I think color is also important for those, right?
you know the tomato that you would like to eat immediately. You should it should be dried, should be dried.
It should be
But
ripe.
what you yeah when you would to put it a long time, you should buy it green. It would have
So if I want to
yeah,
save it for later, I should buy it green. If I want to eat immediately, then it should be red.
correct.
Fantastic, fantastic. That's really cool, guys. I mean, talking about food, because I have to cook alone myself. Today, for example, I made chicken with onions, tomatoes, garlic, um, some teriyaki sauce, Heidi. So I took some teriyaki, and it was a very delicious chicken. But usually, when I go buy vegetables, I buy very fresh because it says fresh, and I look and I see, okay, fresh, yeah, so I buy.
Mm.
But I don't, honestly, I don't know of the rules and the things to look for. So you guys are helping me with that. That's awesome. Um, Unfortunately, guys, we are at the end of class today, so I have another class that's starting right now. But Kwang and Heidi, do you guys have any questions about the future perfect? I know it's a complicated subject.
Yeah. It's very difficult to understand only one lesson.
Absolutely, especially with the amount of stuff that they wanted us to cover as well. So it's something I'll ask them to maybe divide into two classes. But Kwang, did you have any other questions about what we were talking about?
Thank you a lot, teacher. Take care. Yeah.
You're welcome. Take care,
Yeah.
Kwang. And Heidi, have a great rest of the night as well. I have another class that's starting right now for both of you guys, and I hope to see you guys soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Alrighty, take care, guys. A little bit, maybe 5 or 6 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Kwang, how's it going?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Hello, teacher.
Hi, how's it going? I think it's your first time in my class, Kwang.
It's correct.
That's awesome. Going to have prepared a meal by later tonight. Maybe lunch, maybe dinner, maybe a snack. Heidi?
Well, I can't cook because of my injury.
Oh, yes, that's right. So how are you going to eat? What are
Hmm,
you going to eat?
I I can prepare hot pot, nabe, only cutting vegetables. And the middle of us, there's a pan, and on the stove, there's hot water. We put the ingredient inside and dip in the sauce and eat it. So very easy,
Uh-huh.
only cutting vegetables.
Nice. And will you be able to cut vegetables even though your arm is
Yes,
broken?
I can use right hand.
Great, great, fantastic. So you are going to have prepared a meal by later tonight.
Yes, yes,
Fantastic.
only nabe. I mean, I mentioned.
Yeah. Kwang, what about you? Are you going to have prepared a meal by later tonight?
My mother is going to prepare lunch
Your
because
mo-
it's going to lunch.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does she usually prepare? Does she prepare a lot of food for lunch or?
No, every day we do not prepare for the week. We prepare for a particular meal. You
Wow,
know.
that's awesome.
Yes, yes, yes.
So it's
We
always
go.
fresh.
Yeah, correct. It's fresh meat, fresh food. We go to the market every meal. Fresh.
I swear to God, we don't use a lot in English.
Mm.
Okay, even as a native speaker, I find it difficult to think of a natural scenario in which we use the future perfect tense. Um, it's interesting for me as we go through this lesson. I think we will find sometimes that we can use the future perfect,
Is
but
it okay if I use will? I will have prepared.
I will have prepared. So you can use the will as well. Yup, you can use the will as well. There are two ways actually. You can use going to or you can use will.
Mm.
So both of them work in the future perfect tense. But it is something that is rare. I personally find it to be rare in terms of when it's used. But before I get started with that, Murad, how's it going?
Hello, Farhan. How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Awesome.
Glad to hear
So
you.
fantastic. Yeah, we are going to be learning about the future perfect tense today, Murad. So just to get started, to give you guys an idea of what the future perfect tense looks like, there are two ways we can construct the future perfect tense. The first way that we'll be looking at is the will construction, right? So this is what Heidi was mentioning when we use the word will, right? So will or will not plus have plus the past participle, right? Will you have prepared a meal by 7 p.m. tonight? Murad, can you answer that for me? Will you have prepared a meal by 7 p.m. tonight?
Yes.
What?
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Dinner we have to go to the market earlier, about 4 p.m. We go to the market to prepare for dinner. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But lunch is now the time for prepare lunch.
That's awesome. So you guys are really fresh ingredients and visiting the market every day. It's very healthy, it seems like to me, which is very good. In the U.S., a different situation. People don't always eat healthy, and we talk about that a lot in some of the other classes. But because we have a longer lesson today, guys, let's actually get started. And so today we are going to be discussing the future perfect tense, right? So the future perfect is similar to when we use the present perfect and the past perfect, right? But the future perfect is a tense that we use to describe something that will occur before another action
Mm.
in the future, or something that will happen by a particular time in the future. Okay? So it has two different things. So when I asked you guys, will you have prepared? a meal. Are you going to have prepared a meal by later tonight? Are you going to have prepared a meal by later tonight? So our example of that future time period is a later tonight, and the future perfect tense is formed by going to have prepared, right? And it is an interesting tense. It is something that my name is Farhan, and I live in the U.S. What about you, Kwang? Where are you from?
I'm from Vietnam, teacher.
Vietnam. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What city?
I'm South Vietnam, Sóc Trăng City.
South Vietnam. Wow, that's great. That's awesome. I think you're my first student from Vietnam, actually. Yeah, that's great. Hey, Laura, how's it going? Laura, can you hear me? I think, let me write a quick message to Laura. Okay, I think she, unfortunately, we have seen Laura's connection has been really weak sometimes, and it's difficult for her to join classes, but it's okay, I guess. This lesson is very long, 7 different parts of the future perfect. Hopefully we can finish it and still have time for a conversation. Before we get started, guys, so I wanted to ask you guys a question. It's actually nice that both of you guys are in Asia, where the time is now early morning. So Kwang and Heidi, are you going to have prepared a meal by later tonight? Are you going